Shalom, shalom.
Hey, shalom, shalom,
Shalom, shalom.
and welcome back to the Fourth Principle Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Malak bin Adonai, and so good to be back this week. I was out last week. I was a little under the weather, but it's all good. Back with the family.
Okay.
So, to anyone that might be listening and tuning into the podcast this week, first we want to apologize for any of the technical difficulties that may have been out there. We're working through some of the audio and visual equipment that we have. So if you're tuning in and you can't hear us, just please bear with us. We're gonna get it together. All right. So we just gonna get right back into our topic from last week. We were talking about religion and spirituality, and how this works with the family structure. We were looking at traditional values and contemporary ideals, and like kind of where we are today. If my memory serves me correct, we landed somewhere last week in the family venue. So we wanna pick back up with that, and obviously if you're out in the audience, if you got something, please send it our way, and we can have more to build on in this episode. Toda.
Thank you.
Okay.
I know last week we kind of got into how hip hop kind of, I want to say revolutionized, but shifted the dynamics from the Western Christianity, since I think we said that Christianity was one of the predominant religions in the West or here in the United States. I'm trying to see the percentage I had. I think it was 40%. 40% Protestantism, 21% Catholicism, 2% Mormonism, and 1% Christian, and 29% unaffiliated. So, Sifu Mike was here. He mentioned how in the 70s it was a big shift, right? And we kind of talked about that. And I think we all agreed that it seemed like hip hop was a catalyst, or how can I put it? The catalyst that kind of moved people into different directions when it comes to looking outside of that, if you want to say, Christian bubble. Whether it be Islam, Hinduism, Hebrew Israelites, Judaism, and all other types of spiritual systems that's out there. As these brothers, I think Zokain mentioned, the brothers were in college, they started rubbing shoulders with other people, other ethnicities, and so on and so forth, which they put into the music.
Right.
Which caused that generation to seek.
Right.
So, where do we go from here?
When he mentioned the hip hop scene, well, let me not say the hip hop scene, but when he mentioned that dynamic and it being a link that we probably had in some form of our cultural experience, I thought that was pretty spot on. I remember, what was it? I might have been like 12 or something like that. And like for me, like, I was I'm from Houston. So that's a different type of, venue down there. But, I remember some of the rappers back then, dropping a few gems in their lyrics, and like obviously it probably became later, but like, for me it was like a UGK thing. So like I would hear, Pimp C had a side to him or whatever the case may be, but there was times when he definitely dropped something that had you like, what? Like, what's he talking about here? And as a matter of fact, I think one of the songs was called High Life.
Okay.
And in that song, he was he was going in, he's talking about some, some differences in the church, but he, kind of segued into a path that was leaving some knowledge for you to go research. And I think hip hop was just, it was and it still is one of those venues that we utilize that, in its own way, it still educates and, promotes some form of conscious ascension. Oh yeah, I lost my train of thought. So
You were talking about when they was bringing new ideas in, because you're from down south,
Right.
so it's a little different from especially from your era versus my era anyway. So it was a little different. Probably when you got it, I don't know how old you was at 12. When was that?
Oh, 12 out. That was like early 90s.
Right. So and then right, what I'm saying. So my era, like I say, when I fell in love with hip hop was when Planet Rock came out, and I think Planet Rock came out in 1980. So I'm a little bit,
but
in the backside.
It wasn't just in hip hop. It was also like in a lot of R&B too.
Yeah, because it started changing.
Yeah,
because they started putting a lot more hip hop into R&B at that time.
Yeah.
So
I got you.
And also when you're talking about in the late 80s, they started. You had the Fight the Power movement, or the
we all in the same gang on the West Coast.
You know what I'm saying? We power to the people.
Right.
But then you saw I want to say governmental officials taking notice. So they had to get with these entities or these record labels and say, hold up, yo, they getting too much knowledge out of this hip hop thing. So they had to bring in something else. And that's where you start to see the gangster rap come into play.
Somebody might say that's a conspiracy theory.
I mean, they could say that, but that's what happened. I'm just saying. Because if you look at it, before NWA, right? Let me get back. I'm kind of fresh on my hip hop a little bit at that age. There was a group before NWA that did gangster rap, and I think it was called Just Ice. This guy named Just Ice out of New York, and he was a little more gangster with his.
Wait, my posse on Broadway?
No. That's my man in Seattle. But this guy named Just Ice, he was a little more gangster with his rhyming. You know what I'm saying? And there was another group out there with Just Ice that did gangster rap, but it wasn't played as much. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the consciousness of who we were as a people was being played at that time, or party style type music at that time.
Okay.
Until you start hearing the NWA, then you start hearing a lot more gangster stuff. Especially when you're talking about coming into the 90s. That's when the gangster, portrait came into play in hip hop. So to me, it changed because you start hearing a lot more of that than versus, who we are as a people, or waking the minds up of a people.
So, okay. Looking at it from, if you want to say religiosity or spirituality, would you all say that that's how it's been since, when we look at historically, you look at, go back to ancient Rome, Greece, it seems like when something comes out, it's always, if we're talking about the fourth principle, polarity. Something is thrown in the mix, and it's left up to those who are involved or taking a part of it to choose what polarity they want to take on in their character and their being. One could say, and not a conspiracy, I'm just proposing a perspective. It's like, wow, at first they were trying to stop the so-called gangster rap.
Right.
The explicit lyrics.
Right.
I think that wasn't even gangster rap. I think that was Luke.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one that You know, they went to court and everything, and
Yeah.
they came out with the explicit lyric sticker on the albums and the CDs and so on and so forth. But one could say the establishment saw some type of shift that, from the perspective of the establishment, I mean, of course, we could say it was against the establishment, but it was something that could corrupt the children or the people. So that's why I say, is it a conspiracy theory based on a perspective?
Right.
Because one would say, well, no, the music was you know, is waking people up, but at the same time, you have a dynamic that's thrown in there that's, you know, one could say is like gangster rap, or, you know, is this good for the children, for anybody to listen to, as far as to keep promoting that state of consciousness.
Right.
So, and I'm just being angel's advocate. One could say, well, wasn't the government merely trying to look out for the people?
Yeah, somebody could say that.
Somebody could say that.
Right.
Yeah.
But because the majority of the people look like us, we could say, well, no, they were against us. So, you know, again, going back to his historicity, or historically, you know, you had Yeshua, Jesus, and certain sayings that went against the grain, that the establishments were saying, okay, this is not good for our society or for our people. This is teaching the people to rebel.
But, you know, I guess you could probably say later, you know, that
Say that word again. Later or later?
Later, I'm sorry. The destruction would actually be promoted. Right. So like there was a man, I gotta find this professor, but so take for an example, right, when a certain music that comes out that, you know, explicitly targets or promotes, you know, some type of violence towards, you know, let's say me against you.
Okay.
Right. And there's songs that, you know, promote that, or, you know, promote some type of deviant behavior. Right. That's actually that would actually get promoted, because it was engineering a certain type of thought process that coincided with a larger scheme of maneuvers, right? So like, you know, and we'll have to get into this now, right? But like, you know, let's just say prison industrial complex, different things that actually put us at, when I say us, I'm saying, you know, perhaps people of color, you know, put them at a, what some would consider, you know, every statistical disadvantage that you can think of. And that would actually be the recourse for several labels that are in the hip hop industry who are not owned by anybody that looks like us.
Okay.
So, you know, you were saying that, well, somebody could say, well, the government was, you know, looking out for us, or, you know, they were against us, right? I guess it just all depends on the time frame. Because later on, that would be like, you know, it's the complete opposite. You know,
right?
Like that's what's
promoted.
That's what's
gets
promoted.
the airplay.
That's what gets the airplay.
Right, because it sells.
Right.
Not necessarily, hey brother, you know, like if you you know you are one of the gods of the earth, right, or something like that. You know, maybe not so much.
Right. So streamlining it back to family and relationships, family building, and so on and so forth. How do you feel like ultimately it's all affects us?
Which part?
If we were talking about hip hop, or even the topic title.
I mean, so like, you know, with hip hop being one lane, right? It has its effect in both polarities. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, there are brothers and sisters who are delivering their poetry, right? Whether it be in, you know, musical format or whatever, to promote consciousness awareness. And then you got others of us who are promoting consciousness degradation through what they're saying.
Right.
Right. And it could all be based on, you know, how they understand their own consciousness. And hip hop, it is, if you want to use the word, like we kind of went through the definitions of religious and spirituality, you know what I'm saying? But it is probably, one of the more pervasive outlets that we have to connect to religious entities, right? Or, spiritual awareness.